thank you for joining us tonight.
Absolutely brilliant.
It's a
I'm excited.
Good. It's a pleasure to be chatting with you both. Now, I want to start by something probably a little bit more personal. I'm going to start with yourself. So, I mean, as I can say personally, you know, sometimes visibility can feel uncomfortable, especially as like a female in leadership. So I want to kind of get to understand, when did you realise that downplaying your achievements could have an impact on your career, essentially?
Yeah, I mean, obviously these moments, they come up so often for all of us. It's not a straight line. You're past that hurdle and then everything's fine. You're confident of every moment. But I would say my earliest memory of this in my career, I started out in corporate finance before I came into the operational world. And it was the first time that I actually interviewed for a qualified position. And I wasn't qualified yet, but I did have a lot of skills to back me. And I did lots of different interviews with people who actually knew me and knew a handful of my skills. And it ended up being a man who I had a lot of respect for, turned around to my current manager and said, she's actually not going to get this position because the other person who is in the race has much better Excel skills than she does. And now there'd not been a skill test, there'd not been anything to prove my Excel skills. So it was very fortunate for me that I had a female advocate at that time who said, just let her prove it to you. Why don't you set a test? And so we went on, we did this test. The other candidate did not do so well, unfortunately, but I did very well. And that proved to obviously this other leader that actually I probably did have a little moment of subconscious bias there. And now this is someone who had advocated me a number of times, so I think it caught even him off guard. And that really proved to me every moment that I have to speak up for myself. I would not, early in my career, have had that confidence to say, will you do a test and let me prove this to you? Someone else did for me, and that was really a little bit of a penny drop moment for me.
Yeah, love that. It's all about pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone and, you know, doing something that you might not have normally done in it. So, yeah, I love that. Is there anything you want to add to that, or anything that you can share as an experience?
Yeah, I want to talk about a moment that I didn't practice self-promotion and didn't get that job. And I think that actually happened quite early in my career at Google. And I remember sitting in that room and hearing my colleague getting the big project that I wanted instead of me. And I remember just feeling so miserable. And I really promised myself that would never happen again. Of course it did, because it always does. But realizing that I really have to advocate for myself was a really, really aha moment. But also knowing that you need those sponsors to speak for you when you're not in the room. And many times that actually what happens, right? Like the decisions are being made when you are not in the room. So this is the point where we say you really need to make sure that the people who guide your career, who make decisions about your career and about your promotions, actually know what your achievements are. Because in most cases, you're not going to be in the room. So that was a really important learning as well.
And would you say, I know we've kind of touched on it there, but is there anyone that has helped you find your voice, or that you could say is an inspiration in that sense?
I'm trying to think of an example that's not the one that I've already given, but I would probably say for me personally, actually working for WeWork, I started in a finance background, and it's really difficult to make those transitions. So I moved over to an operational role, which involved a lot of team leadership. And again, I didn't have those skills in that area, but I did have a mentor, Matthew Proust, who was the general manager before me, and he was actually really brilliant at noticing skills that even I wasn't willing to believe or acknowledge that I had. And it was amazing seeing myself through his lens of, you know, those moments of, why don't you apply for this role? And I sort of went home and I was like, it is something I daydream about, but I would never dare to apply. So I think, you know, but ultimately, if I hadn't been demonstrating that with him and I'd been having those close conversations, probably explaining to him my skills, but not really believing in them myself yet, that he was able to identify it and portray that on my behalf.
Yeah, love that. So what advice would you give to someone who is maybe struggling to to speak up and to say, you know, to voice their own opinion and to share their strengths, I guess.
I'll take this one. So I would say practice it. First of all, a lot of our listeners here and online have attended probably the IAmRemarkable workshop. So I'm going to bring you back to the top key learnings of the IAmRemarkable workshop, just to remind you, and I'm sure you know it, but just to make sure that you actually kind of have it written down. So the first thing is, remember, you really need to actually talk about your accomplishments. And one trick that kind of helps do it is backing it up with data. So don't voice accomplishments in the form of opinions, but rather as facts. For example, I was successful in my project because I grew it 30% year on year and brought $55 million to the company. Make up your numbers, or, you know, don't make them up, but like actually have your own numbers there, backed up with actual data. So that's number one. And what's easy is actually writing it down for yourself first, practicing it. You can do it in front of a mirror, you can do it in front of a colleague, in front of a family member. Then you actually need to go and do it before your manager or your colleagues or your manager's manager. So whoever is the stakeholder, you actually need to go and do it. And the second thing you need to remember is that accomplishments don't speak for themselves. So you really need to remember that you can't just sit there and expect your manager or your leader to come and give you that pay rise or to give you that promotion or to give you that next job that you really want. It just doesn't work like that. People are busy. People have a lot on their mind. You can't expect somebody else to own your career. So those two things is what I would say, is that accomplishments don't speak for themselves, and it's not bragging if it's based on facts.
I love both of those. And do you know what? I would, just to add to that, as someone who employs staff, both of those points, but particularly the second, you know, whether you're a manager, you're a CEO, whatever, you don't know what everybody's doing, like you say. So for me, I love when my staff bring, sometimes it's too much, but, you know, when it's done in the right way, I'm like, please tell me, I want to know what you've been doing. I want you to go above and beyond, and I want to know that you're going above and beyond, because essentially that's what, as an employer, that's what you want from staff. So it's definitely not something to be shy of, or it's just to be done in the right way, you know, just to be done in a tasteful way. But thank you so much for sharing those stories and for the inspiring conversations. I have got one final question, which you've probably answered millions of times. I'll start with yourself. What would you say makes you remarkable?
Well, I think
and don't be shy.
There's so many things, you know. No, honestly, it comes back to that. I think most people have noted.
Sorry, you can say I think. You need to start with IAmRemarkable because.
Okay. Well, who's going to give me a workshop, Anna? So I am remarkable because I believe I am. And that is literally it, is I think the most, I'm going to expand on it, the most remarkable thing that people note about me is that somewhere in that inner sense, I have continuously told myself, having been battered down to a point where I didn't believe it, I built myself up brick by brick to the point I was like, hang on a minute, I am remarkable. And that's, yeah.
Love that.
Well done.
Love that.
Well done. I go next?
Yeah.
Well, just one?
I mean, as we've got all night.
Okay.
We've got all night.
I think Ellie's going to say no, but I got time. Great. So I'm going to do a personal one and a professional one, because that's what we do in workshops. So professionally, I'm remarkable because I created the IAmRemarkable movement almost 10 years ago, and it reached over 760,000 people in 120 countries. And we've actually trained to date over 21,000 people to become facilitators.
Wow.
And personally, I'm going to share one thing that I actually shared in my first IAmRemarkable workshop, which has been quite a long time ago. And that is that I helped to get my grandfather out of the hospital when no one else in my family had the courage to do so. And he went to live on another year and a half.
Thank you so much. Thank you both so much for that. Can we have another round of applause for the chat? Thank you, ladies. Is there anything else you want to add before we head over to the next award?
Can I give random confidence hacks? Ones that I found to be really effective.
Yes, please
yes.
do.
I'm just going to throw them out before we jump off stage. So I found, as being a female leader, you often find yourself in a side corner, maybe not in a room, etc. Make the most of every moment. When you walk in confidently. Take the master chair. Take the front and center, the middle of the row, the end of the table, whatever makes you feel in that really, I'm in a powerful position. And then use things like body language. So sometimes if people won't listen to me for a little while and I've got a point to make, I'll do one of two things. I'll use an intriguing body language, like a, sneaky little, and they can tell you've got something to say. So people will ask you, Natalie, what's on your mind? And that one does work. And the other one that does work, if you are really being ignored for a long time, then I do a very terrifying stillness. And I do not move whatsoever. And I do moved away body language. And people know, oh no, she's got something to say. And they will again come over to you and give you the mic. So I think creating those little moments where you feel powerful and where you can feel like I'm really drawing people in, find what those are for you and just use them all the time until it feels natural.
Love that. Love that. What an end. Thank you. Thank you so much, ladies.